Property transactions shoot up after market cooling measures are lifted. Financial Secretary Paul Chan says the government will take measures if the property market gets too hot. And the U.S. will airdrop aid to Gaza after aides were killed of aid seekers by Israel. Good evening and thank you for joining us. Financial Secretary Paul Chan announced in his budget on Wednesday that all property cooling measures were removed with immediate effect. The decision has buoyed market sentiment and transactions. Some property agents said second-hand residential property transactions doubled in recent days. The first weekend after the government lifted all property cooling measures in the city and had the loan-to-value ratios for property mortgage relaxed, a bustling site at Show Flats here for a new residential site in Cheung Wan is set to roll out 138 units with an average price of $15,888 per square foot. The cheapest flat costs around $4.1 million, with a size of 265 square feet and is located at the lower floors. So far, at least 3,200 registrations of intent to purchase have been received, marking an oversubscription of 22 times. Ms. Lai, a prospective first-time homebuyer, said because Hong Kong's property prices have dropped a lot, and alongside the government's latest measures, she doesn't think the property market will tumble further. More reservation from Mr. Luo, who moved to Hong Kong through the Top Talent Pass scheme. He said for mainlanders, there are a lot of property investment options other than Hong Kong. According to data from property agents, there were fewer than 10 daily transactions of first-hand residential properties in February on average, before the government announced the removal of property curbs. On the day it was announced, the number of transactions surged to 28, with 53 transactions the next day. Louis Chan, Vice Chairman of Centerline Properties Asia Pacific region, said the sluggish economic environment has made it harder for property owners to sell in the last 1 to 2 years. Despite a better market sentiment, some market analysts said concerns on the oversupply of flats might weigh on the property market, leading to further declines in property prices. But property prices might rise again after the U.S. Federal Reserve confirms to stop hiking the interest rates alongside a better economic environment. Financial Secretary Paul Chan said the government can always intervene if the property market becomes overheated. He added that authorities may introduce a vacancy tax under extreme circumstances. Timothy Lee tells us more.
On Wednesday, the Financial Secretary announced in the budget that the government will remove all property cooling measures, commonly referred to as spicy measures. Paul Chan noted he will continue to observe the market's reaction. Chan said the government can always take action when necessary if the property market overheats. He stressed that the city could levy a vacancy tax under extreme circumstances, but noted that such a tax is not currently necessary. The FS said the withdrawal of spicy measures was meant to send a clear message to the property market to let it operate freely. He added that negative statements about Hong Kong made by the U.S. and some other Western countries adversely impacted the market sentiment and flow of capital. Regarding the government's plan to offer to sell just one plot of residential land in Sha Tin in the first quarter of the next fiscal year, Chan said authorities are flexible when selling land and will increase the amount according to demand. Addressing concerns about issues with public finance leading to delays in land reclamation and Kau Yu Chau Artificial Islands project, the FS noted he has confidence in pushing ahead with the development. He predicted that government finances will break even by the 2027-28 fiscal year. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
One of Hong Kong's long-established construction contractors, Fung Chun Kee, has gone into liquidation. It had been in operation for more than 40 years in the city. At least 120 workers have been affected. The surprise announcement came on Friday. Fung Chun Kee is estimated to owe various subcontractors more than $100 million in debts. Secretary for Labor and Welfare Chris Sun said the 120 affected workers could apply for ex gratia payment from the Protection of Wages on Insolvency Fund, but even more uncertainty for the subcontractors affected. They include Mr. Chan's company, which undertook subcontracting jobs from Feng Chun-Kee for over 30 years. Feng Chun-Kee owes them $60 million. It's understood Feng Chun-Kee has at least 10 unfinished construction projects. Some subcontractors said they still have to carry on with the works under their contracts, even when the main contractor company is winding up and won't pay them anymore. The government earlier submitted the Construction Industry Security of Payment Bill to the Legislative Council to prevent wage defaults and other cash flow problems in the industry. Under the bill, if subcontractors cannot receive payments within 60 days from the main contractor, they have the right to suspend their services. The legislation is expected to complete next year at the earliest. A worker was found 7 hours after he lost consciousness at the construction site of the West New Territories landfill extension. He was later pronounced dead at hospital. The incident occurred at the landfill construction site on Nim Wan Road in Tuen Mun. The 64-year-old male worked on site formation. His family contacted the construction site manager after he failed to return home at the usual time of 5:30 p.m. on Friday. After CCTV footage was checked, the worker was found lying unconscious on the platform. He was sent to Tuen Mun Hospital and was later pronounced dead. Sources said the worker had high blood pressure. Director of Environmental Protection Samuel Choi noted the construction site contractor must fully cooperate with the police and relevant authorities in the investigation. Following Israel's attack on 8 seekers in Gaza, that led to over 100 deaths. The U.S. has agreed to carry out aerial aid drops. The Israeli ally has come under pressure as more details emerge about the attack. David Garrett reports.
The United Nations say many of those injured following the rush on an aid convoy in Gaza on Thursday suffered gunshot wounds. The health ministry in Gaza says at least 112 people were killed. Israel, who released this overhead footage, say their troops opened fire when threatened and many deaths were caused by a stampede. 24 hours later, Israelis protested at their US embassy. America described what some are calling a massacre as a tragic incident. There has been international condemnation. These demonstrators say the US must do more to curtail Israel's war on Hamas and help bring hostages home. The crowd chanted directly to the US president.
Biden, Biden, bring them home!
Joe Biden reacted. The US has decided to participate in aid drops. The president made the announcement while hosting Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. But Biden made a blunder. Having produced similar gaffes in the past, the 81-year-old got confused and called Gaza Ukraine by mistake twice.
In the coming days, we're going to join with our friends in Jordan and others in providing airdrops of additional food and supplies into Ukraine and seek to continue to open up other avenues into Ukraine, including the possibility of a marine corridor.
The Italian Prime Minister reacted uncomfortably. White House officials were forced to clarify that Biden had meant Gaza and not Ukraine. They also explained getting airdrops right might take time.
You want to do it in a way that you can get it to as close as you can to the people in need, but not in a way that puts them in any danger. And so the Pentagon will be doing a raft of planning on this. They'll work their way through that.
As the sun sets, hope on the horizon for hungry Gazans. Food floated in on parachutes. The US stresses drops are not an alternative to aid trucks, but a safer supplement. They are still pushing for a truce during Ramadan. Jordan, Qatar and France are among the countries already dropping aid by plane. France has been one of the most vocal Western critics of Thursday's attack by Israeli troops. Their foreign minister calls for an independent inquiry. David Garrett, TVB News.
South Korean police conducted a raid on individuals of the Korean Medical Association in Seoul for their involvement in encouraging the country's strike by doctors. Officers collected evidence from their mobile phones and computers. The doctors remain defiant and have planned a large protest in Seoul tomorrow. More than 70% of interns and resident doctors from South Korea's general hospitals remain on strike, despite a government back-to-work order issued on Friday. The Ministry of Health and Welfare said a total of 8,945 interns and resident doctors have walked off the job in 100 major hospitals, accounting for 71.8% of total doctors. As of late Thursday afternoon, only 565 doctors had returned to work. Since late February, more than 9,000 interns and doctors have left their work sites in protest of the government's plan to increase medical school enrollment quota by 2,000 next year from the current 3,058. And still ahead, city and its residents brave some chilly weather today. Autonomous vehicles can undergo road tests in Hong Kong starting this month. Welcome back. It has been a chilly day today, and the cold weather warning is still in force. The temperatures in most districts across the territory dipped to single digits this morning, with Tai Mo Shan having recorded a low of 0.7 degrees. Heavy fog enshrouded Tai Mo Shan, Hong Kong's highest peak in the morning. An ethereal sight as thick mist drifted through the mountain ridges. With a drizzle, roads became slippery. In the early morning, Tai Mo Shan recorded a temperature of 0.7 degrees Celsius. Still, it's not as cold as January when cold snaps hit and the peak became strewn with frost, ice spikes, and frozen branches. Some hikers who wish to see the wintry sights here said they're not disappointed because there would still be opportunities in future. Ngong Ping on Lantau Island recorded a low of 3.5 degrees. It was 3.9 degrees on Tate's Cairn or Tai Lo Shan at its coldest. In urban areas, most districts saw a low of 8 to 9 degrees Celsius. But that did not deter some swimmers to take a dip in the waters of Hung Hom even before the crack of dawn. It's a bit colder up here, but not that chilly in the water, the swimmer said. Many others could be seen wrapped up in thicker clothes.
I think we're just going to stay home. It's actually freezing today, so we're just going to stay home and chill at home.
Actually, I just came back from Japan, and then Hong Kong I think is cooler. I don't know if it's the wind or it's just much cooler here today, even though it's still like 9 or 10 degrees.
The Hong Kong Observatory expects the northeast monsoon will continue to affect the city on Sunday. On Monday and Tuesday, the northeast monsoon, which is bringing cold weather through Hong Kong, will be replaced by a humid southerly airstream. The observatory said it will remain humid with occasional drizzle over the coming few days, and is said to be warmer on Tuesday, with the mercury set to return to around 21 to 25 degrees Celsius. 8 defendants have been charged with participating in a protest in Central in 2019. They were sentenced to between 33 months and 3 years and 9 months in jail. The defendants were involved in the Lunch With You protest on November 12, 2019. During the incident, large crowds blocked parts of Petter Street, Daewoo Road Central, and Connaught Road Central. Some participants in the incident set objects on fire and caused damage to nearby buses. The 8 defendants are aged between 26 and 29, including former actor Joseph Ng Chi Kit. They were charged with participating in a riot and using masks in an unauthorized assembly. Autonomous vehicles are allowed to undergo road tests starting this month under the amended road traffic regulation. Secretary for Transport and Logistics Lam Sai-hung noted that he rode on several self-driving vehicles while he was in Guangzhou and Hangzhou. Services using such vehicles have already been introduced to the Hong Kong International Airport. Authorities will push for more autonomous vehicles to be tested on the city's roads and provide residents with more opportunities to ride on them. In Russia, crowds were met with a heavy police presence as they thronged to the church where the funeral of opposition leader Alexei Navali took place on Friday. A rights group said at least 91 people were detained at events commemorating Navalny across the country. Tracy Furness has more.
Thousands of people turned out to bid farewell to Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny Friday at his funeral in Moscow, albeit under a heavy police presence. There is still no explanation as to how Navalny died 2 weeks ago in an Arctic penal colony. In a snowy southeastern suburb of Moscow, crowds chanting slogans for Navalny and against Russian President Vladimir Putin and the war in Ukraine, turning the event into one of the largest recent displays of dissent. Even though there was a heavy police presence, officers did not act against them. But according to rights group OVD Info, at least 91 people were detained across the country at pro-Navalny events. Meanwhile, in Serbia, where thousands of Russians moved to after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, people lit candles and laid flowers outside the Russian embassy in Belgrade to pay tribute to the opposition leader.
I think like for all of the Russians right now, Navalny means everything. It's like we lost everything 2 weeks ago.
It is a tragedy of our country, of our people now, Russian people, but it will be soon a big problem for all.
In Italy, a delegation of the Italian Radical Party, along with residents, laid flowers in front of the Russian embassy in Rome to mourn Navalny. The Radical Party also glued small street signs reading Via Navalny or Navalny Street on the walls facing the Russian embassy. Navalny was buried after a short Russian Orthodox ceremony. The funeral followed a battle with authorities over the release of his body. Russian authorities still haven't announced the cause of death for Navalny, who was 47. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
Extreme winter weather is affecting parts of the U.S. Life-threatening blizzards are hitting California, and officials warn for residents to stay home. NBC has more.
Tonight, relentless waves of wind-whipped snow pounding the California Sierras. The National Weather Service issuing a rare blizzard warning for the region with life-threatening blankets of blinding whiteouts on the roads. Major interstates already shutting down after accidents like this big rig flip near Truckee.
If you don't have to travel, do not. Skiing, snowboarding, sledding is not that important. Your lives are way more important, and we want you to be safe on the road.
Areas from Yosemite to Lake Tahoe can see from anywhere from 5 to 10 feet of snow, with more than 12 feet of snow, gusting at over 100 miles per hour in the mountains.
It's just going to be the storm of the winter so far, so we're just going to hunker down.
There's no fun for anybody. You can't sleigh ride, you can't ski.
Several ski resorts now shutting down lifts. Yosemite National Park closed until at least Sunday. Local residents preparing to be snowed in for days.
Ice melt, generators, lanterns, flashlights, batteries, anything that you can think of that somebody would need for a power outage or a severe storm, and they are coming in for it.
At its worst, officials warn of 2 to 4 inches of snow every hour for days.
This one is a 96-hour cycle, so it's really going to affect us in the next 24 to 48 hours.
Tonight, an entire region bracing for impact.
A rescue operation was carried out after a truck with a driver still inside was left hanging precariously over a bridge in Kentucky above the Ohio River. A 3-vehicle crash had left the female driver stranded. It took 40 minutes to set up a rope system so a firefighter could drop down inside the cab and pull her out using a harness. The truck driver went to hospital as a precaution.
This is very much a worst-case scenario, kind of a crazy thing that you don't expect to actually have to do until you show up and you see it and you're like, oh my gosh, this is actually what we've talked about, and here we're ready for it. Firefighter Carden did an amazing job of keeping her calm. She held it together like a champ.
One of London's busiest train stations was left virtually empty after a train driver staged a walkout over pay. King's Cross is usually a scene of frenzied activity ahead of the weekend, but not yesterday. Deserted platforms and empty tracks, services to the east and north of the UK were brought to a halt. The Train Drivers Union organized the action, saying their members have not had a pay raise over 5 years.
What the drivers are striking about today is the fact that their driver managers are driving trains that should be driven by drivers, train drivers, not driver managers. So they're driving these trains for a substantial amount of money being put into their pockets rather than sitting down and negotiating with train drivers on a decent pay rise.
And that's the news. Thank you for watching.